Hey guys, so this is going to be one of my first React videos, and it's to Raise Guide base building, attacking, and defending issues. I'm going into this video completely blind, though I have seen a few of Ray's videos. I'm genuinely not a fan most of the time because of his character or personality assumptions when it comes to PvP. I think he's got some really toxic takes towards PvP and stuff like that, but the subject of, attacking bases, defending bases, building bases is one of the biggest reasons I'm playing Star Citizen and looking forward to the future of it. So this topic is really dear to me, and I'm really curious about what this video is going to look like. Skeptical, but again, bases, the development of them and stuff like that, it crosses both the PvP and PvE categories. So let's see what we think. Again, completely blind.
Hello, this is Danny Raymond, the voice behind Raise Guide. In my first video on the proposed base building system, I set out 6 major areas of issues. In the second video, I went further into the first 2 of them. And in this video, I'm going to go into further detail on the second 2, which have a common theme of the attack and defense of bases. This is an important subject because the ability to create your own scenarios of my building a base and defending it against others, or in being the assault force against another org's base, are very attractive features, and for no small number of players, exactly what they are most looking forward to in the whole base building system at all.
I give credit to him there. Like, I think he's talking about PvP here, which he usually isn't that fond of, but where credit's due, it is why a lot of people are here.
The 2 core areas that I covered in that first video were as follows. 1. Bases should not be vulnerable to cheese wins. And 2. Losing a base raid should be painful, but not soul-crushing.
Yeah, like, I mean, I think that can, scale to the risk of the system. Like, they proposed at CitizenCon, it should be between high sec, null sec, and low sec, right? So you're looking at null security, meaning there's none, medium security in low sec systems, which would be standard in this case, and then Terra, which is planet shielding, protect the bases completely. So, which has associated rewards next to associated risks. So, I don't necessarily agree with this. Like, if it's a null security system, actually, I hard disagree with it, and the reward is high, then it should be soul crushing. That's the entire point of building a base. You have to build it, and it can be destroyed. So, I don't like this. Like, one thing I really despise about the Star Citizen community is their unwillingness to lose. It's like, for any type of victory to feel good in any sort of matter, you have to suffer it. There has to be a balance to that equation, and you need to be able to lose things. Especially when we question the legitimacy of the game, like if there's no way to lose in Star Citizen, and we're just flying around in these NFTs, then what's the point? So yeah, I disagree. I think that losing bases, based off the security systems, again, like nullsec, should be soul crushing. Absolutely soul crushing. And if you can hold on to your base and keep it up, then it should be extremely rewarding. So yeah, I don't agree with that. Also, cheese wins, I'm assuming he's talking about offline raiding. I mean, he has to be, right? So I'm assuming cheese wins is offline raiding.
And before I get into these details,
which, for the record, is just attacking a base when the players that would be defending it are asleep, going in at a time zone that the organization's offline for, and then trying to take it off before, or take it out before they come back online. Which there's some common MMO mechanics that stop that from happening, like vulnerability timers and stuff like that. So there's some working mechanics in the gaming industry for these types of raids, and it would be silly to assume that Star Citizen isn't going to use those.
Let's be clear that these are my suggestions. They're not predictions, although I certainly do other videos that are predictions, nor are they demands, and they certainly are not leaks. I have no inside information and not really much interest in discussing leaks at all because they are so often just plain wrong. These are suggestions.
Fair.
And I'm going to discuss this from the standpoint of bases on non-secured spaces, on non-secured planets, because it is the most extreme case.
Okay, well then you're talking about PvP. So this video, I guess, is almost going to be entirely focused on the null security systems, meaning no protection from AI, no protection from game systems, at least the high-sec ones, and PvP, orgs going up against orgs at sea.
And thus, solving the issues for non-secured planets is the most challenging, and once solved for the non-secured planets, the semi-secured and fully secured planets are pretty much good to go. But first I'm going to start with a step back, some questions that were commented on in my prior video on the subject of using a predefined grid of square lots. Is there a precedent for such a rigid system? Wouldn't it need buffers between plots for security and circulation? And would it apply even to a planetary body completely outside of UEE control? Yes, no, and yes. For the precedent, look at the PLSS system, or Public Land Survey System, which is how the entirety of the central and western United States went from conquered or purchased territories into private landowners and leases. They divided up into townships, sections, and quarter sections in a straight-out grid. And then later, when the actual land use patterns emerged and the real need for where circulation corridors and such were needed, it would become evident, and the cities and townships would decide where the roads needed to go and created easements from the private landowner. Moreover, in Star Citizen, unlike ground-based games like Ultima, the primary circulation space is the air. And so there is no need for long-distance roads or highways. It's not going to be significant. More than that, the empty space represents unavailable resources, opportunities for squatters, and a place where an invading force could muster without any authority to intervene, all of which are undesirable. That is why...
Why though? Like, why is it undesirable?
The PLSS had no gaps in...
Like, people that are going to the null security systems understand it's a huge risk of PvP and PvE. Like, you know, I don't think they're afraid of that risk. It's the whole point. It's what you sign up for when you go into these systems. So I don't find it undesirable.
Its grid, and why, let's call it the UEE survey system, UEESS, would also define land ownership without gaps. But would that apply to a completely unoccupied non-UEE planet? Sure. Why? Because the geotag would have UEE survey standards and land ownership record terminology built into it. Stick it into a barren planetoid and it would presume that your goal was to create an eventual UEE member planet, use stellar cartography to determine the poles, equator, and meridians, figure out which of those UESS plots it had just been stuck into, and boom. So how do you get a security buffer around your base? Well, either one of three ways. First, don't build right up to the edge of your land. Second, have a trusted friend or org mates own the surrounding plots. Or third, just buy the surrounding plots yourself too. Which brings up two interesting side issues. First, how...
I don't think having, or I guess he's talking about from like an individual player standpoint, because I don't see how grouping lots would make you, unless you're like counting on your neighbors helping defending your base and stuff like that. But you know, if anything, I thought that with null security bases that it would be more about secrecy. You know, because the reality is you don't want to get spotted, and you're not in these planets like Microtech. You know, the size of them. Finding a organization's base in particular is gonna be next to impossible. You know, unless they're of course like planted at like some rare mineral biome or something like that. But you know, I think the main thing about these bases and null security is going to be secrecy, to be honest.
How high should your defensive air rights go? The answer is not quite as high as ships come out of quantum travel, because you generally have no control over where you come out of quantum travel, and it wouldn't be fair to unknowingly come out of QT under immediate hostile fire. Second, should there be limits on how much land a...
I mean, how... Like, at what... I don't understand that. Like, you're saying that people... I mean, you're not going to quantum jump that low to the planet anyway, like, in any scenario at all. So, like, extremely confusing. I don't think that's a risk at all. Like, you go to an outpost, you're not at any risk of, when you quantum jump to an outpost right now, of being above a base and shot at by the turrets. Like, it's, if you quantum jump around planets, you know that's not a risk at all.
A single individual or org can own, because there will certainly be
Unless we're talking about like super mega fortresses or something, but not at all.
wealthy players or orgs that could sweep in a buying binge until they have huge tracts of land.
She's beautiful, she's rich, she's got huge tracts of land.
Now, it's hard to think of a limit that couldn't be circumvented, so my proposal is instead on UEE and faction-controlled areas, new homestead areas are opened up a few hundred square kilometers at a time and at multiple planets and places simultaneously, so that it wouldn't be possible for a single player to be both at planet A to plant geotags at their most desirable places right at the opening, and also be at planet B and C at the exact same time.
Yeah, multiple bases for like single players. Yeah, I don't think, a single player should be even able to operate a base. Like, I mean, you're flying bases essentially, and maybe in the like high security systems where there's no consequences to that, but yeah, like I don't think we want to be flying around planets and just, if anyone's ever played Star Wars Galaxies, as soon as you left like the city limits, you were just running into thousands of houses to the point that there was almost no space surrounding cities. So, you don't want that overabundance of or that huge amount of player basing that just suffocates out the planet. But again, not a consequence that I'm worried about when it comes to the high security systems. And I think with the idea that you can attack these in null security systems, not really concerned, because you're not going to want people to see it. I think you're going to be relying on secrecy.
Also, make the process of placing and activating a geotag be a little bit too complicated to be done by a bot or macro. So, with that sidebar out of the way, let's look at a base attack and
like a bot or macro
defense, and realize that there are two groups of people. First, the base builders and defenders. Let's call them bottoms, because they're on the ground.
Okay.
And then there are the players and orgs who like staging base assaults. Let's call them,
which would be us for sure. Like, that's definitely why I'm here. Playing Star Citizen is the group, organization, gameplay, sieging, stations, bases, etc. Here for the EVE 2.0.
Tops, because they will be arriving and departing from above, from the air. And the thing is, for there to be fun and harmony, there has to be a relatively equal number of bottoms and tops in the game. If the bottoms grow weary of being treated badly, they will leave, and then the tops have nothing to do but play with themselves. So if when the base builders start to complain that the situation is being too rough on them, don't say, serves you right for building in an unsecured place, because the worst case scenario is that they will agree with you, take you seriously, and say, you're right, and leave. So what do the bottoms need? Well, they need the ability to build their base in relative peace until it is defensible. Winning by attacking a base that isn't ready to be defended is cheese. They need an
No, in null security, like maybe low sec, high security, what he's saying, yeah, maybe a valid point. But I'm assuming he's still talking about null security here. No, like if you start building a base, it's not immune until it's completely fortified. It doesn't work like that in any game that's based off base building and PvP. So I really disagree with that when it comes to the null security systems, but I'm completely willing to compromise, or would have been completely willing to compromise when it comes to like low and high security systems for sure. But no, not at all, because then that in itself is cheese. Like, say, for example, a rival organization has bases in this specific biome because they're trying to mine these certain minerals, right? Well, I could go with my guys in the middle of the night and we surround their base with 10 more bases. And then what can they do? Nothing, because those bases are invulnerable while they set up and then are surrounded by these bases. So no, it's like there's offensive cheese as well with that, and I don't agree at all.
ability also to rebuild their base that has been defeated in relative peace for the same reason. They need the ability in uncontrolled and limited.
No, like we signed up for the risk. When you go to a null security system, you know how it is. Like we have to get away from this opinion in Star Citizen that we're like not entitled to losing. Like no, if you get caught out, your base is found, it gets raided, that's it. You know, you've lost it. And you need to rebuild it without any guarantees. So if we're talking about PvP, then no, let's like go all the way with this, in my opinion.
Controlled areas to be able to set up and maintain their own attack on site list, both as individuals and orgs, so that if they are regularly being attacked by an org or individual, they don't have to take a Moab in the face before they can shoot back. To make this work, there needs to be
no, I completely disagree.
some sort of game over criteria to say, okay, you've won, or okay, you've lost, so assaults don't drag on forever into tedious sieges. And there has to be a way that this happens reasonably organically and in lore so that the victory or defeat feels genuine to the game. And to describe this, I am going to use the comparison of the base to a chessboard. There has to be a king piece. Take the king and game over. There has to be a queen piece. Take the queen and the dynamic has swung decisively so that you should be able to achieve victory quickly. There should be major pieces, the knights and bishops and rooks, that are important goals. And then there's also the pawns that initially form the defensive wall that you need to create gaps in order to make the opportunities you need to get at the major pieces. So, from that, what's the king piece? Well, in my opinion, the king piece is the hangars and their associated automated warehouse and freight elevator. Without them, you can't keep respawning vehicles and ship and keep bringing weapons from storage. And what's the queen piece? The reason.
So he's talking about attacking like individual components of a base, I guess?
Spawn-capable medical bay, because without it, you can't keep returning to the battle yourself.
I dig it.
Only at your secondary respawn port at some station far away. Now, some will say I have the roles of the king and queen pieces reversed, and
I guess you could associate that with like rust beds, stuff like that, like a clone bay, etc. So yeah, that makes sense.
may be right. I went back and forth on it while I was writing this. The role of the pawns is pretty clear, though. They are the automated defense turrets, and there must be at least 3 types. There must be turrets that are capable of taking out bombs and torpedoes with nearly...
Yeah, well, you're not going to get that on every base. Like, the computing power of that alone would be insane. Like, if you're talking about intercepting bombs and torpedoes and missiles, like, in an MMO of the scale that we have and the depth and complexity we have already, it's... Yeah, I just don't see it. Like, I know maybe if you were playing a single-player game, but, you know, reliably, I think, no. You know, maybe like something that, like jamming the devices or something like that. But, you know, we're talking about flak and intercepting torps and bombs. I just don't see it.
100% certainty. These must be available so there can't be an instant cheese win with an A2. Then there needs to be anti-aircraft turrets, and that are highly effective.
And that's the question, right? Is like... is Ray assuming, like, from what I hear, it sounds like Ray's kind of wanting this playstyle of, well, I've got this plot too bad, you know, and then relying on the game to defend it for him. It's like, I don't think so. I think if you want the land and you want, you know, to be seen, like your base to be found and all this jazz, then... You know, you got to be willing to put in the hard work, not rely on these game mechanics. Like, again, I think if Ray wants a base that isn't going to get attacked frequently, that he can profit off in a null security system, then I think he should be dependent on secrecy. And I think if players find him and he doesn't have players to defend him, then that was his poor decision, you know, or his poor planning. But to protect you from PvP, especially in a null security system where they went on stage and said these are the high risk, high reward bases. it sounds like Ray almost wants to get rid of the risk. And yeah, I really don't like this way of thinking when it comes to Star Citizen. It just encourages entitled players, I think. It's like, no, you should get out of your own problems.
So that the combat craft can't take out the anti-bomb turrets too easily. And finally, ground defense turrets.
I just don't
to
think
make
this
life
is realistic.
challenging if you are going to try bringing in tanks and such. So that effective base assault will need to be a combined arms exercise. Light ground.
I like the combined arms aspect of it for sure. Like maybe the A2 bombs can't damage below the surface, interior and stuff like that. Or, you know, bases have shielding. Like, none of us want an A2 bomb to come in and level a base really quickly and easily, right? Like, should it be able to damage bases? Yeah, absolutely. It's the entire point of an A2 or an A1. You're not using those ships in space. Like, if anything, that's exactly what they're there for. So I don't think ridding them or them playing that gameplay mechanic makes it cheese. We just don't want it to be extremely overpowered.
Troops to
But I like the
make a
idea of
gap in the
interior
ground
goals.
defense turrets, then armored assault units to take out the air defense turrets, and then air assault to take out the point defense turrets, and then, if you wish, an optional coup.
I think the turret gameplay, like, you can install turrets on your bases, maybe like jamming devices, etc. Like mechanics that you can kind of stack towards your defense is great, but not to the level that you're intercepting torpedoes and A2 bombs out of the sky. Like, we've all PvP'd in Star Citizen, you know, even getting a missile to reliably hit or a flare to work to evade a missile or to get a missile off you is proven mostly impossible. So I think these goals are a bit ambitious and not really realistic.
By a bomber. Now,
I like the turrets.
Are these separate models of turrets or multiple configurations?
The separate models can be like missile turrets and laser turrets too. Like, I'm a big fan of the missile turrets actually at PlayStations, because, you know, being an organization that used to lock down stations a lot in the earlier days, you know, we could just outfly the laser turrets easily. The missile turrets, on the other hand, proved to be far more formidable and made locking down stations actually quite difficult. So missile turrets are good gameplay, and they performed pretty well under server load, which is exactly what Star Citizen is, always under server load.
Settings on one model of turret. The one makes it easier to read the defenses of a base with a reconnaissance run and planned, and the second makes it easier for defenders to adjust tactics between assault and require the assaulting forces to be ready to change tactics on.
We don't know if the freight elevators are going to be at bases, but dig it if it is the case. I have a hard time thinking they would do that, though. Like, I mean, the player bases aren't on the ground going to have hangars, from my understanding. Maybe pads, I guess, but, you know, I don't think we're going to be spawning a lot of vehicles out of this early implementation of bases. I think the bases aren't going to be that big, to be honest. Maybe in the future when these are player-owned stations, but I think this might be a bit overambitious for the first implementation. See?
The fly, as during the assault they learn which way each turret is configured. Either is okay method, but it's worth considering which one you want. So, how do you limit the losses from having your base be successfully raided, and how do you give protected periods so the players can prepare their base and recover their base? Well, my suggestion for how this would work, and again, suggestion, is as follows. The first is that the geotech itself and the land claim cannot be destroyed. In other words, your assault force can defeat them and wreck everything, but the land claim itself does not become yours as a result.
Yeah, I don't like that. That's just softening the risk. No, when they went on stage and they said that this was profitable, then you're going to have to defend your way out of this. I don't think money or some invisible mechanic should, you know, protect the land when another organization has leveled it. So, yeah, I disagree with this. Again, softening losses, I find it to be exhausting. If you lose, you lose. That's it. And if you win, boy, do you win. Play the game.
They can sell it to you, but that's all. And the second is...
So he's saying that an organization can attack your base, level it, and then they have to buy the land off you? Like, they've just leveled it. Like, No, again, it's just protecting the buyer. Like, nah.
That the King building, the hangar and automated warehouse, and the Queen building, the regen-capable medical facility, cannot be built by the player. They can only be bought by the player from the associated company, for example, AeroView, because of secret proprietary technology. And these companies like AeroView will, in order not to be accused of trespassing,
Blueprints and materials. I guess this video isn't about that, but I'm really looking forward to this. Look, that's like a pistol grip on the screen. Man, crafting is going to really add some depth to this game, and hopefully the economy too, which is non-existent.
only build on locations with a valid land claim, and for the person who has the valid land claim. This explains a couple things. Why the outlaw derelict outposts don't have hangars, automated warehouse, and medical facilities. And second, that if you want to squat on a piece of unclaimed land and build your own derelict outpost, you could use your Pioneer and Galaxy to build turrets, habs, etc., but you can't make it a fully functional base because you can't contract to have a hangar, warehouse, or medical facility built there. Then this also explains the protected periods that I feel.
See, this is what's like, so, I mean, what's going to stop land claim cheese then? Are you telling me that like 20 of my friends can log in day one of the patch and then reserve all the good land, on a biome that has rare minerals on it and then sell it? Like that's cheese in itself. Like all the mechanics he's talking about introducing to protect people that own these land claims can be used to cheese and ruin the game anyway. So like there's two sides of this, and you have to think about the downside to it. And I can think of a lot of exploits that people would do, like just buy up all the land in the rare locations, then sell it, or all the wanted land. And if there's no mechanic to claim the land because someone else just reserved it, then GG. Seems a bit silly.
Are necessary. When, let's again use the example of AeroView,
Here we go. Like in the citizen representation, location, high security, land claim, full protection, taxes and fees, high cost, and a low financial return. So again, high security
warehouse for a player, they also come in with a formidable squad of protection to keep their workers, equipment, and technology safe. And you can specify how long they can have the base in order to build. Let's say up to a week. So if you give them, for example, a week to do their job, it means you have a week of safety on the site to complete your own base building activities and things like turrets and habs. Then if you wait to the end of that week to contract with the medical facilities company to build the hospital, you could get another week of safety, since they would also have their own security. Now, after a defeat, the same companies are also the only way to repair these facilities, just like they're the only ones that can build them. So same reasoning, you can get yourself up to 2 weeks of protected time to rebuild the rest of your buildings at your base. A final rule also applies to the King building and the automated warehouse is that it never actually is destroyed, but rendered inoperable. In other words, if they shell or bomb your warehouse, you can no longer get anything out of it, but more importantly, neither can they. The warehouse, and just the warehouse, is unlootable. So if you put a bunch of rare and expensive items, freight, and subscriber gear in there, you can't get at it until the warehouse is repaired, but it is not lost, which is the balance I'm trying to set as a goal. Losing a base defense should sting, but not be soul-crushing. Because nobody says, good game.
No, like it should be soul crushing. Your subscriber gear in a null security system, Ray, you should lose it. Because that's the entire point of the null security system, is you're not protected by these game mechanics. If you want what you're describing, it should be in high security, maybe low security. But in null security, we want none of it. We want none of this. Like, I find it ridiculous. No, like you knew the risk when you came here, you signed up for it. We're not about softening it. Like, I don't think you're going to find the PvP players are trying to encroach on how the high security system should work. You're going to be protected by magical planetary shielding, and that's okay. You can have it how you want it there. But in the null security systems, it's about there being null security null insurance. You know, like you put it up, you are at massive risk, you will lose it if the circumstances dictate it. So I don't believe in these half loss measures. Like, no, like it's, you lose it all. Please, it's PvP. Like, we don't want this constant safety, this constant protection by the game. Let the players play the chessboard.
Let's do it again next week after a soul-crushing event.
And I don't mind, like, in EVE Online, for example, the ability to take down a base, it involves multiple attacks over a certain time period. Like, you can bring down a structure into several periods where across multiple vulnerability timers. So, you know, it might take a combined 3 attacks across a week schedule, but and you know you have 3 chances of defending it. I'm okay with that, but no, once the health bar reaches 0, that's it. Loot pinata. Like, you've lost the base. It's not soft loss, and you know it's just in flames, and you know you get to keep everything else. No, I don't think so. But I can relate to the sense that we don't want offline raids, or you know, your organization to be, for example, celebrating Christmas, and then you get raided that day by a group that you weren't suspecting, and then lose out no opportunity to defend it. Like, that's not realistic either. So vulnerability timers have proven to be a working mechanic in other games. Let's use that. Maybe multiple attacks to reduce a base to 0. Let's use that. But none of these half measures. Not in the PvP systems, please.
So finally, an update on our Grow the Channel giveaways. We continue to make progress towards awarding some lucky player the Zippy Zazzy Zativ Zeta, the Zeus 2 cargo, as well as towards the Marvelous and the Secret World.
And that's it. I just worry that Roy's videos are protecting this toxic way of playing Star Citizen. I think that at some point the game economy needs to function. And for that, there needs to be loss. Too many players in Star Citizen are accustomed to scenarios that don't hurt, you know, repair bills that are inconsequential and nobody even thinks about. And an economy that is just really nothing in comparison to US dollars. It's about time us as players, especially PvPers, because we're signing up for it, started experiencing some real loss. It's time for losing to really be painful, to make winning feel extremely rewarding. You know, you're not going to be telling stories about how crazy this night was with all your friends trying to hold down your base if losing the base wasn't that consequential in the first place, you know, or taking down someone's base didn't net you as big a reward as you were wanting. So I think when it comes to the null security systems, I don't think PvE players should honestly have anything to do with it. And if they do, that's fine, but you sign up for that risk. I want the null security systems to be brutal, you know, because it should be polarizing. That way, the PvE players get to enjoy their high security system where they're completely protected, or if they want to gamble a little and, you know, lean on some other mechanics, but include into some risk for some reward in these low security systems, sure. But the null security systems, nope. The Wild Wild West, please. Anyways, good video by Roy. I actually liked some of those points. But again, trying to avoid NFTs in space. Yeah. And the biggest, I'll add this cherry on the top. Please do not make bases purchasable with US dollars. Okay, like, all these bases should belong to organizations. They should be a significant grind for the in-game economy. Like, I'm praying that the bases, the introduction of bases, is the beginning of a working, functioning UEC economy that we haven't had in a decade. Like, please, no skipping this. This should be a grind and a combined effort with your entire organization. A huge feat to upright a base, okay, and not something that I can go to the store, spend $500 US and drop a land claim. And then, you know, if Ray was to have his way, when someone comes or an organization comes and blows it up, doesn't matter. I get to keep everything anyway, and I just need to pay some guys to repair it. Scary that players want that. But either way, I don't think that CRG will go for it. Extremely excited for this mechanic, guys. Really, I am. And planning on putting a lot of that content on the channel. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time.